You know, it's always good to hear my jazz accordion teacher play. He's the best there ever was, man. I wish I could still play, but I'm way out of shape with that. It's never going to work. But anyway, hi guys, how are you?
Morning. How's
Tony,
it going?
morning.
Pretty good, man. Just another week has gone by, and my buddy and his girlfriend are coming over later to watch the game, football game. And she's bringing homemade chili, which I've never had of hers. I love chili, so we're going to see how this turns out. So if I end up in the intensive care unit, you'll know why. Let's hope not. What's up with you, Nico? You sold the house, huh?
Yeah, I sold the house, so I'm in a transition period right now. Just had a very stressful week, but it's all over now.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you got it and get settled and in time before the bad weather starts. Today is quite cool out, at least over here. I don't think it's even. It was 39 earlier, but I'm sure it's going to hit in the 40s or 50s today. But
Yeah, it was a good time to move. Not too hot and it was not too cold, so perfect timing.
yeah, I had some issues one time when I had to move, serious health issues because of it. Heat stroke. It was in the hundreds. It was like 105 the weekend that I had to move, and I had to move to my place, and I was moving in with my girlfriend at the time, my fiance at the time. So I had to move her place and my place. Oh, that was brutal. But anyway, so what's up with you, Joe?
Well, not much. Actually, you mentioned football, and it's been a couple weeks since we've been able to record, but we had a loss to the football community a couple weeks ago. We lost Gail Sayers. I know it's a little bit of old news, but I think it's worth mentioning again. One of the greats.
I got to meet him. A nice, soft-spoken, nice guy. Had a nice handshake. Pretty firm grip. I mean, I met him. Well, let's see. Johnny Lira was with us, and Johnny passed away in 2012. So I don't remember exactly. 2010, 2011. At some function, which was nice.
Is that around here?
Yeah, it was in Chicago. Um, it was cool. Big dinner. Not for him. I mean, Gail just happened to be there. It was just a bunch of athletes. It's an athletic thing. Real nice. Yeah. Boy, time is flying. I mean, goodness, yeah, that's about 10 years ago. Like I said, Johnny died in 2012. So it was before then. And I think it was before that year because Johnny was pretty sick that year, at least near the tail end. And so I would think it was 2010 or 2011. And we're approaching 2011 now anyway. So my goodness, time is just, where's it going? It seems like it's accelerating, the speed. That's what they say when you get older. Time flies.
Yeah, they say that you grow up slowly and you grow old fast, but it just keeps getting faster and faster.
Yeah.
Speaking of time flying, last night I saw in the theaters, I saw the 40th anniversary. They re-released Empire Strikes Back, which I can't believe it was 40 years ago that I saw that as a kid, which kind of ages me. But did you ever catch those back in Cleveland?
Oh, they had them all over, but no, I never seen any of them. So,
wow.
Well, I'm not a sci-fi guy. I mean, I do like the Twilight Zone, but that's not to me. I mean, that's science fiction, I guess, but I'm not into this outer space stuff. I like Star Trek or anything. It just never appealed to me. Those are not the kind of movies that I like to go see. Everybody's got their own little tastes. But two, I didn't get a chance back as a kid to really get to see any movies. I don't think I've seen as a child. I doubt I saw 5 movies at the theater. We didn't have the kind of money to go, hey, here's some money, go to the movie theater. I mean, later when I was able to work, I was in high school and I had a car, and then I'd either go with my buddies or with my high school girlfriend or something, but those were not those were sillier movies. I'm laughing because I remember we got into it. My girlfriend at the high school sweetheart, she wanted to go see this one movie. I didn't want to go see it, but we went to see it. It was called Sleepaway Camp. Oh my God. If you guys ever get a chance, it's like a terrible B movie horror movie. Okay. Uh, about mass killings at a sleepaway camp.
Aren't they all?
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think I've seen that one. I think I saw that back in the day, maybe on a VHS tape or something.
Away. Don't give it away. But yeah, you got to kind of almost see it because it's that bad. Yeah. And then I remember seeing Scanners with my buddies in high school, and we all got a kick out of the one scene. Again, I won't give it away for people who haven't seen it. But yeah, you're talking 40 years ago for those movies, pretty much 81, 82, something like that. 80. I don't know. It was a long time.
Yeah, sometimes when we practice the front face lock with you, I feel like I'm going to have a Scanners moment.
Yeah, those are good times, man. I miss putting front face locks on. Yeah, but let's see what else. Shockingly, my Cleveland Browns are 2-1. They're playing the Cowboys today. I don't expect much, but we'll see. And the Bears, on the other hand, they're 3-0, but they've been dodging some bullets, so I don't think they're as good as their record indicates. But let's see now with the new QB, see how they do.
Is this a full season? Or are they?
Yeah, unless things happen. Now they are postponing certain games, like because Cam Newton tested positive for COVID, so now they canceled, or I shouldn't say canceled it, but postponed it. And because of that, now they're rearranging the time schedule. So my friend Scott and his girlfriend Jerry, they're supposed to come over around 11:45 to watch the Bears. Well, I didn't let them know that the Bears don't play now until 3:25. So I'm going to watch the Browns. They play at 12, and they're going to watch them unless they call me or whatever. Then they decide to come later, but which is fine. But yeah, it's supposed to be a full season, unlike baseball, which I just I'm a huge baseball fan, and I'm sorry, this season to me doesn't count. I don't care who wins the World Series. I said this before my Indians got eliminated. I will not consider them a true World Series champion. I think with the format of the playoffs, it almost became like hockey, where almost everybody makes the play. I mean, you look at the Cubs; they have 5 teams in the division. 4 of them made the playoffs. It's you win roughly 30 games, and you're in the playoffs. That's not baseball. But the Cubs got eliminated. The Sox are out. The Indians are out. So it is what it is. Congratulations to whoever is going to win. But yeah, I'm not. I'm a purist when it comes. I think we discussed this once before on this show. I'm a purist, especially with baseball. Yeah, that's pretty much it. Not much has been. Not what else are you gonna say? Holiday season is coming up soon. This month is Halloween. Now you got what next? Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's. I mean, boy, it's just flying by.
And all those holidays are going to be so much different, I think. Like I'm still not quite sure how Halloween's going to work around here. Are they going to be sending kids door to door, just little groups of infection agents, or I'm not quite sure how that'll work. Or do they want you passing out candy to kids? I know that like they talked about. I thought Los Angeles was going to try and cancel it, but I think there was a mass revolt against that. It's just, I don't know how these things are going to work.
Well, I mean, where I lived previously, almost 10 years, and I've been out here 6.5, and I don't remember even having kids coming over. I mean, to me, Halloween has been pretty much, nobody comes out. At least where I, because where I live, there's hardly anything. So, I mean, I'm sure I'll have candy. I don't even know what it's about. I'll probably have some candy. I'll get some, and if they show up, okay. I don't even know what day it is. What day is Halloween?
October 31st.
31st.
What day? A Monday? What is it?
Don't know.
Yeah. I think last year they canceled it here where I live, or they changed the day of it because of something. I don't remember what, weather, or yeah, it may have been a weather thing. I don't remember now. But that was then. This is now. We'll see what happens.
It's on a Saturday.
Saturday. Oh, there you go. Saturday night.
Well, that's a good day to have it too.
Yeah, Friday or Saturday night's great. But yeah, I remember once in 7th or 8th grade, we had to give a debate. Well, I was chosen to give the debate about keeping Halloween, and then there was a team, me and like 3 others, and then there was a team of 4 that had to give a debate on why Halloween should be banned. And this is going way back into the 70s. So talk about banning Halloween has been going around since I was a kid. Nothing.
Yeah. Who wants to ban that? What kind of a lame person wants to ban Halloween? That stuff's awesome.
It's the one day of the year that you fit in, Joe.
Exactly. I can walk amongst the normals and they don't get frightened. And I can take as much candy from kids as I want. It's perfect, actually.
Yeah, it's good. So this week, we were one of the subjects that it seemed to be unanimous between Joe and Nico. They wanted me to talk about pain management or pain tolerance, or in essence, the effect of pain, or conversely, the lack of it in a fight. You would be surprised on how many people that you would think can handle pain can't, and conversely, how much pain you think you may not be able to handle and you can. Shock plays a big role. Artificial influences such as drugs and alcohol can play a big role. So when you think that you're going to use a pain compliant move, may not be effective on someone if they have, maybe a lot of adrenaline, or they have narcotics or something, or even just being drunk in the system. And conversely, though, you have to learn to be able to manage your pain tolerance. I've seen so many guys just, wail away, and whine like, ow, ow, ow. You can't do that. Your mind has to be on the game. I like to give the analogy of like when you're hammering something, if you're just doing some repairs and around the house or your work, and you hit your thumb with a hammer, man, does that hurt? Well, part of the reason it hurts is because you're completely not expecting anything like that to happen. Whereas in a fight, either a professional competition or amateur competition or a street scenario, your brain kicks in to kind of warn you like, uh-oh, trouble's brewing, and you should already be prepared for something. But regardless, even using the hammer on your thumb, it may not stop the initial pain, but that's where the power of the mind comes in, and you've got to start breathing properly. You've got to try to channel your thoughts onto something else. It seems, at least in my experience, it's been a lot easier in a street scenario because your adrenaline or sometimes your body or mind will go into shock, and you don't feel it. I've told stories about the injuries that I've gone through in street scenarios, and really in hindsight, it wasn't, it's shocking how little things physically hurt until afterwards. Okay, until X amount of time afterwards, and that's a positive. That's a good thing. But still, your mind has to. You almost have to do like a self hypnosis, where you can learn to tolerate this. This is something that can be developed in, I would believe, in anyone. Certainly we've talked about, I'm not sure we did it on this podcast, but we've discussed ways of learning how to not get grossed out by things you may see, like a paramedic or a surgical doctor or nurse or something. They get almost accustomed to seeing calamities of the human body, or veterinarians would see it with animals, and you can develop a almost like a numbing effect to those kinds of things. And you can do the same thing here with pain. Um, One of the movies that sticks out was Lethal Weapon, where Gary Busey, hung put his arm over the cigarette lighter, and just obviously it was fake, but how he was developing a tolerance for that. And I don't recommend doing that because you'll burn your arm, but you can develop uh, to a degree, pain tolerance. I've seen demonstrations of it as a child, legit. I've also seen fake demos, but legitimately you can do it. Um, and it's almost like, think about it like when you're in such deep thought, you may be around people. This, what I'm about to tell you, has happened to everyone listening. You're in such deep thought, people are talking to you, you don't even hear them. You're like so detached. You're like, wait, what? What did you say? Were you talking to me? You have no idea what they were even saying because your mind was detached from that. And it's the same principle here. You have to develop that same scenario regarding pain. And the other thing I told you, when we rip people in ripping training, I've seen grown men cry like babies because of the ripping, because how much it hurts. Uh, your body can itself now. Not, we're not talking about your mind now. Let's get off of that subject for a moment. Your body can develop a resistance to certain things like that. Um, it becomes, I don't want to use the term numb as in tingling numb, but numb as in it don't matter anymore. It doesn't phase you as much. You become calloused to it in a way. And your body does build up a resistance to it. The other factor involved with the ripping is that psychologically you don't become shocked. And most people's training doesn't involve any kind of rips or hooks or anything like that. Well, let's leave hooks out of it, but that's because that's a permanent injury there. But the rips, and you all of a sudden become shocked. You become shocked that, number one, somebody's doing it, like putting an elbow or a thumb in your eye or whatever, or wherever. And so now you've got to come over that initial shock that, how, wow, somebody's done this. This has never happened to me before, and the actual pain of it. So you're dealing with a couple of things there, surprise and uncertainty, because you don't know where this pain is going to go. Is it going to become a crippling permanent injury? And that's simply because you've never experienced it in your training before. So I assure you, the first time that I got whooped in the street with baseball bats by multiple assailants, that certainly wasn't something I ever trained for. Okay, I never had, what was it, 3 guys that time come at me in training full blast with baseball bats wailing on me. So not everything can you prepare for. You cannot, but you can prepare for a lot. And the biggest thing in my training growing up was the constant pain that I was, not injuries, but pain. I'm not saying I never got injured, but while I was training, but generally it was just pain. And I got used to the pain. And um, I to me, being what's the word I'm looking for? Being exposed to it, it just was not a shock. It's kind of like an argument with your, let's say, your wife, your girlfriend, or whatever. After you do it, maybe the first time, it's a shock. Second, third time. But after a while, you'll like, here it comes again. I don't know what she's going to say, but I know we're here it comes. It's going to be a big blowout. So you kind of become aware that, all right, here it comes. Here comes the hurt. Here comes the physical pain. And you just brace for it mentally. And if you can physically, you try to, diminish it. So my advice to people before they start going out self-mutilating is just make sure that you have been exposed to certain kinds of discomfort in your training. Don't just all of a sudden jump in with, full blast and, try to, be crippled here, but you want to be exposed to pain in your training first and foremost, not injury. There's a difference between pain and injury. Pain is a temporary thing. Injury, can linger. So if you're not experiencing that at all, you're really not doing yourself any favors. You know, there's that expression when I think it came from lifting weights, no pain, no gain. Well, I'm not saying that, especially when it comes to lifting weights. Just lifting smartly without any sort of pain, you'll get some gain. So that's more or less like a stereotype or a myth. But really, in your training for fighting, I mean, fighting by nature hurts. And when somebody's attempting to do you physical harm, as opposed to a sportsman who just wants to win, um, to think that you're going to get out of this without some pain, that's wishful thinking. And hopefully it'll happen that you don't get pain, but it's wishful thinking. So I think you have to start initializing, uh, ripping, things like that, gouging, pressure points, whatever. If you're not doing that, you're not utilizing my adage, which is, your whole body is a weapon and his whole body is a target, so that's the motto that I've always lived by and always will. So that's pretty much what I have to say on that. I don't know if you guys want to add something to it, go ahead or ask questions.
So what are some of the ways that Rodvon trained you for pain tolerance?
Ripping.
Just ripping?
Well, I mean, he did a lot of self-hypnosis, I think, in some of his strongman feats of strength. Bending coins, for example, or whatever. The other things would be that weren't tricks, like laying on a bed of nails, which really isn't painful. It's just a little discomfort. You've got to have some power of the mind here, but it comes natural. Excuse me, when you're training this difficult, this intense, week after week after week, month after month, year after year, you're naturally going to build up some tolerance to this. You're also going to start almost becoming like I guess a masochist in a way, because that all this pain is making you tougher. It's making you stronger. And what might have been at a 10 intensity level, the same amount of pressure 6 months later is now a 5. It's like eating spicy food. You adapt. Okay. The same level of food will not affect you that much, once you become adapted to it. And that's the same thing here. But the ripping, and the not letting go when he had that submission on and roughing, just making me realize, hurting me in other ways as a form of punishment for being submitted. While I've mentioned this before, if I tried to do that training now to people, I'd be locked up. But it was the greatest thing that's ever happened. It taught me that you do not want to get submitted. And, I see it now as more or less a game in training. Oh, you got me. Okay, that's fun. Let's laugh. Let's try it again. Whereas in a street or in, any sort of life or death thing, it's not a laughing matter, so yeah, I would say just for sure the ripping, knowing going in every time I went that, man, how much am I going to hurt after this is over with? And then, yeah, and then all of a sudden it starts to be less and less, and it's because your brain, your mind is adapted, your body has adapted to it. And I don't know, for me, I wouldn't have wanted to train any other way. Um, it wasn't gentle. It certainly wasn't.
Do you remember the first time he ripped on you?
Well, yeah, I mean, the first time he put on a top wrist lock, I was getting ripped when he was doing it, across my here, across my neck, I'm like, this, it was an incredible thing. I mean, but if you want to take it back, let's step back before that. Just the physical conditioning exercises was a form of ripping to me, okay? Because I was being pushed, not physically, but uh, verbally and psychologically to do things that I wasn't accustomed to doing at that age. So that in itself was a mental rip, okay? But physically, yeah, the very first time he did the top wrist lock on me in training. I'm now you're having me go back almost 50 years, but 43 years ago, but it was that. I mean, and I'll never forget that. And that's why I tell people, when like, you guys know it firsthand when I talk about any specific submission, but you want to soften a guy up first. You want to elbow blast him or you want to do whatever, in addition to the submission hold, or hook as it may be. So yeah, that was, I'm like, oh, and then you have to process this. Okay. So first of all, you got a guy who's ready to break your arm, and then at any moment in time, there goes everything. Plus, as I said, all the other stuff on the chest, on the neck, on the face, on the nose, wherever, with his arm as he's putting a hold on. But this is brutality at the highest level outside of bringing in a weapon. That's not you is the weapon, right? Uh, it's a sadistic thing. I'm gonna not kid you, but this is why it's the most effective that I've ever seen. You're playing with fire here. So yeah,
Tony,
for everybody.
Tony, can you define the word ripping for someone that might be totally unfamiliar?
Yeah, well, I do have a video series on it, and there should be some clips on my website. But ripping is basically um, putting pressure or pain on vulnerable parts of the human body, okay, such as your cheek, your eyeball, your nose, your lymph nodes, the neck, the groin, the areas along the ribs, pretty much anywhere on your body, okay. You know, you could even uh, classify, let's say I was standing on your hand, standing on your fingers. That's a form of ripping because I am trying to physically cause a reaction, not necessarily in itself a finish to the fight, but it will lead up to it. Um, I don't think this is a direct correlation, but in boxing, they'll talk about somebody peppering you, just light jabs or light punches so they can set up the knockout blow. And in that regard, there's a similarity where my rips are designed to lead me to another level of injury to my opponent, and it helps soften the guy up physically and psychologically. It's terrifying for someone who's never been involved with this because they don't know how far this, in my case, let's see, it's me doing it. They don't know how far I'm willing to go with this. And they're feeling pain where they probably have never felt it before. So now, again, that's part of my whole strategy in fighting is make the opponent fight himself as well as fighting you. So now he's battling his own feelings, his own psychology that is saying, okay, you're in a lot of pain. You don't know where this is going. I got fear, da 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 da. This man is focusing on so many things now, just besides you, what you're doing to him. He's focusing in on how his body and mind is reacting to this. And trust me, when you get ripped, you're going to do some of this is an autonomic reflex. Your body's going to move in a certain way, and depending on what you're trying to get, and I know which way it's going to go. So I'm setting you up for something, and you have no idea what. And so I would rip intentionally, depending on which reaction I'm trying to get. So it's a fascinating subject. And I've always felt, now I don't normally rip a guy when they first come through because I just know they can't take it. They're going to be like, this isn't for me. And I've had guys even later in their training quit. Okay, ripping is kind of like this is where I know if the student's going to be here for a long time, long haul, or if he's just going to split, is when we finally get to the ripping. And he has to be conditioned. I make sure that their body is a little stronger than when it came in. And that doesn't necessarily, a lot of times weightlifters or bodybuilders are prone to getting ripped because, you become a little bit tight. You may be a little bit sore just from lifting to begin with and blah, blah, blah. And, there's just being a weightlifter, let's use that umbrella term, is not a defense for ripping. Like I said, in many instances, it's going to make it a little bit easier to do. So yeah, it's something that I feel should, in a perfect world, you'd start right off the bat. Once we get to the actual hands-on stuff, the ripping should be introduced immediately because it's part of how you set up submissions. It's part of how you move. It's part of how you get out of submissions. And rips can be used offensively and defensively, and it also develops your mind because it lets you know when to do it, when not to do it. And you start to learn how the human body is going to react, and you become quite creative. And it's a subset that needs to be learned and mastered, and very few do. So, and I don't see that changing because people just aren't right. I'm speaking under general terms here. People aren't ready for it. They haven't been in 25 years of me showing it around here, or however long it's been. Some guys just, and I hear it from students the world over that write me that they're not allowed to rip in their gym. They're not allowed to do it. They cannot do it. They're forbidden to do it. And I'm not talking one or two emails, but through the years, hundreds, if not thousands of times, I've heard that or read that in an email. Yeah, we can't rip. We can't do this. We can't do that. And I understand. It's not your gym. It's your coach, whoever the instructor is. It's their gym, and they have their philosophy and their way of going about it. You gotta follow what the owner of the gym is saying is allowed or not allowed. So, just like if you went to a strict grappling school, grappling only, you're not going to come in there throwing punches and kicks. They're not going to allow that. That's not what their school is all about. So you got to kind of deal with it.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think a lot of them look on it as kind of either like cheating or bad sportsmanship, or which is really unfortunate because you're right, it can be used in a technical fashion. So it's not just a cheap shot, if you're using it to set things up. And the other impression I have too is, a lot of times we have these submission matches that go on for a really long time, or someone just gets a very defensive posture. They keep their hands really close, tight up because they know you're going for their arm or neck. And, if you're not allowed to kind of rip or attack them in other ways like that, assuming striking's not available, these things you have these elaborate setups to get these submissions opened up when really there's a more direct path to kind of get them to get out of that defensive posture, possibly.
Yeah, well, the key word, what you said at the beginning, is sportsmanship. And again, there's no sportsmanship in a reality, life or death scenario here. So you can eliminate that. But you're right. This is a science. This isn't, and I've said this years ago, in the 90s on the internet, and I've said it even on my videos, ripping in itself is not a substitute for knowing how to wrestle or, fight. So you can't just, I'm going to I'm just going to start gouging randomly. No, there is a science to it, and it's extraordinarily technical. And people who think there's no technique involved, again, they're not to insult them, but they're just, they don't know. They've just not been exposed, and in a way it kind of forms a sense of ignorance, just like I'm ignorant of the Greek language. I don't know Greek. So yeah, it's the same thing here. You just don't get it until you're training it. and it's fantastic. And you're right. Many times people will play a game, um, and they'll win within the rules of whatever the event may be, and it doesn't even have to be fighting related. And they'll use the rules to their advantage. And yeah, that's kind of gaming the system kind of thing. So hey, if people don't want to learn it, that's their choice. I don't. I'm not on a crusade, to make the whole world into a bunch of rippers here. Those who choose know to come to me, and they'll get it, and they'll get all my knowledge, and eventually they'll come to respect it, and they'll respect it the same way that somebody should respect a loaded handgun. Okay. Treat it with the ultimate respect because it can do a lot of damage. And, it's my thoughts on it. But as again, there's so much more to it. It's not a standalone thing. Nothing is standalone. Everything is intrinsic. You build upon it, everything. It's like an ingredient in the final recipe. Okay. And you have to know, is it a topping? Is it baked inside? Where does it fit in? And that's the beauty of it. That's the depth of what I teach, how it goes. So many things are, you know, intertwined. And I just wish there were ways that I could just say, hey, this is how you should learn it. Just do it. And unfortunately, like I said, in today's day and age, you kind of have to curtail certain things, sugarcoat things as well, and what are you going to do?
On your snap no tap video, I think there was one of the volumes was just conditioning, and there was I think it was Costa did a round of rip conditioning on Jeff. I
Yeah.
think I never met him, but is that what was demonstrated there? How regularly is that something you would want a student to do?
Quite
To,
regularly. I mean, that was just a little demonstration of it. I mean, obviously, we didn't, Costa didn't go hog wild, and you don't want to injure your opponent or your training partner. But once you get to that, once it's introduced, that has to be routine. I mean, you may not have to do it every workout, but at least, I mean, how often are you working out for one? But let's just say you're working out 3-4 times a week. It's got to be in there once or twice a week. Your body, you can't, okay. It's like a guitarist. Now, I'm not a guitarist, but my father was, and I obviously being a musician, I know guitarists. One of the things is they get their fingertips calloused. Okay, when they're playing, and that'll go away. And then you got to start all over again. You don't want that. So once your body and your mind are on this ripping routine or regime, you want to keep it going. You want your body to get used to that, like lifting weights. If you quit lifting for a while, I mean, an X amount of time, not like a week, you go back to the gym, man, you got to ease back into that, otherwise you're going to get sore and everything. It's the same thing here. So yes, you need to make this an integral part of your training. Now, so many people want to talk in absolutes too, black and white. Well, how many hours, how many minutes, this or that. Well, again, everything is different for every person. Okay. And it's different for where you're at in your training right now. And this is why you need a world-class coach, a coach that isn't about him or herself so much as they understand, how can I develop each, let's say you have 20 students, each of my 20 students is going to be at a different path in life. I got to know how to get the most out of each student. And part of that, you have to develop a relationship with your students. Your students have to tell you all about themselves from a physical standpoint, injuries, aches and pains, goals. What are they doing when they're outside of the gym as it relates to, working out? And then you have, again, now that's on a student, but now getting back to the coach, he has to be able to assimilate all this information and come up with the program that's going to work for you. it's not a cookie cutter thing. I mean, most schools probably are cookie cutter. You know, everybody does the same thing, you know, blah, blah, blah. And then you have a little bit of time on your own to work out. Well, you know, that's not really generally speaking, that's not really the way to go unless everyone that's beginning is on the same level, you know, which is a zero level, let's say. Um, but then shortly thereafter, you're going to have some people who are going to develop quicker or slower or inside or outside of the box. You got to be flexible as a coach. You know, you have to be able to identify this and boom, go for it. And you're going to have students who are going to be motivated in one aspect of training more than they will be in another. And so you have to, number one, explain to them the importance of being well-rounded and doing as you say to do. And secondly, you have to find ways to motivate them and make them enjoy more than what they currently are doing this. So it'll, what's the word I'm looking for? It'll inspire them. It'll make them anxious to want to do the exercises or do the techniques so they can get better. So it's a mental physical thing. There's, you know, it's hard. And you do, as a coach, you get burned out, especially when you get certain people who just don't care. You know, they just want to be oohed and awed, show me the fancy stuff or whatever, you know, blow my mind with something or show me something new every week when you don't even know what you learned last week, you know. And where do you stop becoming an entertainer as a coach? And where do you start becoming an educator? And there's a huge difference between an entertainer and an educator. And sadly, many coaches, not just in fighting, but in general, get confused of the two. Okay. And it all becomes, well, it's about me now. It's about the coach getting his ego stroked, as opposed to the biggest ego stroke is seeing a student progress and become world class. That's the ego stroke coaches should be looking for. But yeah, there's so much to this, Joe and Nico. It's so much more than a technique. You know, it's like looking at a roof on a house. Well, how did that roof get up there? You know, the roof is not going to suspend itself. You know, so the roof doesn't exist without the rest of that house or building as a structure. And that's how training has to be. It's a full structure here, everything. So yeah, that's about it. That's about all I can say on that. I got to have a drink of water here.
Well, Tony, I'm interested on, you said Rodvan would bend coins. Did he actually take a coin and bend it with his fingers?
Yes.
With bare hands?
I saw it more than once, and many people throughout Cleveland and probably wherever else did it. You know, boom. When I saw him, he would do it like that. One hand was the locking, was the gripping thing. I wish see, we should prepare for some of these questions. I can't bend coins, but I could show you. I don't want to use the word tricks, but because it's not a trick. You have to have strength, but there are techniques to bending things, bending bars, bending nails. Like when I used to do the strongman shows and I'd bend the bar and the nails, there's technique involved in it. Okay. And you could make things more difficult for yourself to the point where it's an impossibility, or you could make things easier on yourself. So one of the things, if you're going to bend a coin, is you've got to have that one hand, even if you're bending a nail or a rod, is the vice hand where it's not moving. Okay. Because a lot of times people will bend and they'll try to bend and you're creating 2 points now, where there's going to be stress, where you don't want that. You want 1 point. Okay. I'm not prepared for this. I don't have any prop that I could use here to show you. But I don't think this is going to work, but okay, maybe this will. I don't know if the camera can pick this up or not. I'm not seeing it too well, but if you try to bend something, let's say this is an exaggerated coin, or it could be a nail, it could be anything. And I try to bend it like this. See what happened there? See how this wire, there's now 2 points. I didn't bend it. That wire is still straight. I'm bending on these points. That's not what you want. You want to lock this in, let's say, and you want to use this hand to bend this way. See what I'm saying? Or you can grip it. I used to grip like this and come up with it. Okay. as opposed to going like this, where I'm, now I'm in essence trying to make two bends. That's not what you want. Okay. So you want to know, I don't want to use the word again. I don't want to use the word trick because then it sounds like it's false. It's not. It's just, that's the advantage, the technical advantage. It's physics. Okay. There's just simple physics to this. And that enters into everything. And it relates even to when I fight, when I put a lock on, a submission hold. I'm trying to make your body so weak when I do it that the submission is more effective and easier to do. So it's kind of like the same principle there. Um, there's, I think, there's been other guys who've legitimately bent coins pre Stanley and post Stanley. I believe Mike Dayton, the former, he was a strong man. He could bend quarters. I've never seen him do it because I've never met the guy, and he's probably 70 now. But there were a few. There was another guy. I can't remember what his name is, but he had a weird name, like a stage name, and he did it. There was others, but then there's also magic tricks. But I know people who used to walk around. They used to carry the coins that he bent for them. But that's just one of the things that he did. And believe me, he had to use the power of the mind because that's painful. I trained to bend coins, and so much I used to dream about bending coins. And it is quite painful to do because you got to get your fingers calloused and stuff, otherwise, and your fingers are flexible, or not flexible, but they're fleshy, and there's a lot of play in your fingers, and you've got to stop that. You've got to get it where your fingers are rock hard. So the coin isn't like, going into your fingers, it's got to be solid, and then boom. I just, and it was a daunting thing, and it wasn't really something I wish I would have pursued more, but I was young at the time, and I was just more about learning to defend myself and being a skinny kid and everything, not thinking I'm ever going to become strong, like that kind of strength. I focused on learning to fight because I was making a lot of progress there. Okay. I mean, it was just coming to me. But that, is great. But, it's just like you got to be well-rounded too. And he was strong in a lot of ways. But I remember when all these grippers started becoming popular, and some guys were really strong men. But there were a lot of folks who just focused on grip strength, that they could close the grippers, but everything else in their routine, they weren't benching much. They didn't have any arm strength. They just focused strictly on the grips, which is fine. It's if that's all they want. But that alone, closing a gripper, let's say, doesn't make you a overall strong man. So my whole thing always was about being balanced, being well-rounded. And actually, it may shock a lot of people to hear this, but strength was the least of my concerns because I never looked at I was fast as a kid. I was thin, skinny, wiry, and fast. And I always kept that as my ultimate goal here, becoming fast, or faster and faster. I guess I didn't really give it much thought about, becoming super strong, but again, I didn't have access to weights or anything like that until years, so later. I mean, I don't want to sound like a wimp here, but you talk about extreme poverty, that's me. My grandparents, we had nothing. So for me to, to think that I can get all this weight equipment and I can start lifting like a freak, never happened. I actually tried to make some homemade weights and everything. And so yeah, I never saw myself becoming like, a legendary strong man. I just felt, well, I've been blessed with speed. Let me try to keep my speed going. And that's that's where I was at. But even like when I wrestled, I mean, I would move around quickly, and my hand speed was good for strikes, and running, I was fast, and that was my best attribute, I guess, from a physical standpoint. I wasn't one of these kids that was strong. I knew some kids, maybe a couple years, some was maybe my age, some were a little bit older. These guys were strong, not Rodvan strong, but just big, strong kids. And I'm like, wow, that's impressive. But that's what they had going in. I had the speed.
So Tony, what kind of equipment did Rodvan train with? Did he have like, big boulders and steel bars that he would bend in training, or?
He didn't have any boulders or anything like that at that point. You got to remember, when I knew the guy, was in his 70s, okay,
Oh.
late 60s and and 70s. So his best days were, I mean, he was still doing feats of strength, pulling cars, and whatever, bending things, and scrolling. Um, but yeah, as far as, I didn't know him when he was my 30s or 40s years old. I don't know what he had then, or what he even had access to. Um, but yeah, he was a traditional weightlifter, like an Olympic style weightlifter, not a power lifter or not a bodybuilder type. But what I thought was interesting with him is he would do feats of strength that, like, okay, so before him, there was like strong men that would do, they would have their signature move or whatever, their signature exercise that they would do, or feat of strength, their signature feat of strength. And one thing about him is that he seemed to have been able to take what all these guys did and do all of it, and put it in his show, like walk up ladders with a pony on his, across, his shoulders, and of course bending the coins, and the scrolling, and lifting up, pulling, having pickup trucks or trucks run over his body, and pulling things with his teeth, and what do you call it? Tug of wars with the horse. These are things that some of these strong men, they did one of those things, or maybe something else. He would take what all these guys were doing, it, and do them all. Um, that's what was, I mean, I don't know if any other guys were doing that, but that to me was fascinating.
So what is scrolling?
Okay, so like, you'll take metal and you can actually bend it to make like designs, literally with your hands, with your legs, and you could make it like in a shape of clovers, or like try to make it look so like you're tying a knot, things like that. I mean, it was just, it's fascinating to do, and it's more difficult than it appears. Now, I did some scrolling years later, because I had the strength by then. But I never wanted to embark on a strongman show career or something like that. So I didn't put in all the effort that I probably could have. And I was, well, like I said, I had some debilitating illnesses or injuries, and, I didn't need any more. And some of this stuff, can be dangerous. You could blow out, you know, uh, let's say your rotator cuff or your labrum and things like that. And to me, it's certainly not worth doing that and blowing something out for nothing, for like, just putting on a free show or whatever. I remember Bill Kazmaier, who was one of the strongest men who ever lived, blowing out, I don't remember now if it was his labrum or his shoulder, or rotator cuff, whatever, bending bars. And it was a debilitating illness, injury. I don't know if he ever 100% recovered as far as his bench pressing strength and stuff from that. Um, but yeah, you just have to, you have to watch all this stuff. Your body's not used to doing these things, right? And it can catch up with you years later. I know that from firsthand. I'm a bundle of pain a lot, but I still keep going, as best I can. Some days it catches up to me and I just chill out. But yeah, scrolling is something that a lot of the old time strong men did. Um, and I'm sure there's even probably videos. I've never looked it up, but I'm sure there's videos somewhere on YouTube of old timers scrolling. Um, and then rolling up. There's another thing, rolling like frying pans and things like that. Um, really, you're limited to your creativity in your mind as far as what you can do. There's some staples, tearing a deck of cards, phone books, things like that. Doing things on a bed of nails, which that is more of a trick. Um, but I used to blow up hot water bottles. You can do all that. I think I have a photo on the website of me with, and I had it out to here. Somebody took it right before it blew up. Um, so those are standard in the repertoire, I guess. Just like a jazz musician knows a few, knows standards that they got to play certain tunes. But yeah, it was a fascinating time, but the thing that got me was just his seriousness about stuff. I mean, the guy was serious as a heart attack. Those were the days, man. And then years later, I meet Lou Thez, who was not into, I mean, I don't know what he did when he was young, but he wasn't a strong man. And Lou was built similar to me, taller and thinner, I guess, more. We were pretty much identical physically, our weight, our height. I'm saying when he was in his prime. And, Lou was, I don't know, I guess Lou was, I don't know what it would have been like if I would have met him when I was a young boy, or if I would have met him 30 years ago, or when he was 30, and, if I could go on a time machine. But I saw similarities between myself and Lou. One of the things when we would share techniques and share thoughts, it was about entries and setups and things like that, because everybody has their own, it's like a recipe. Like I told you, my friend's girlfriend's coming over here today for chili. She's bringing chili. Everybody makes chili a little different. Well, that's one of the great things with Lou. He would do something and he would do it maybe slightly different. Okay. And that was what was great. Here, this is how I do it, Lou. Oh, wow, I like that. Here's how I do it. Oh, wow, Lou, I like that, and that was cool. And I think that's the secret to life, not even just fighting or athletics, but just relationships, be it romantic or friendships between guys or girls between girls or whatever, girl and guy, whatever, is what do you bring to the table? Am I going to be better off knowing you and having you in my life? And that's what I try to seek out in people. I don't need to be blown away. I don't need somebody to become an eraser and just like, clear off my mental chalkboard and start anew. I just need someone to add that little spice, to bring things to me, little knowledge here and there, whatever. And, that's what I always seeked out in people, even just cohorts in life, nothing to do with working out or fighting or music or anything. Just what do you bring to the table? Maybe they can make me laugh. They always got a fresh joke. Or maybe we can talk about their travels in life, where they've been. And that's what you need in a coach, not you specifically, just you in general, is, in my opinion, a coach that can touch you, that can bring something to the table and maybe light that fire to get you to develop into the wrestler or fighter that you want to be. Or if he's got a limited knowledge base, he can start you off and then hand the baton to someone else. And that's an important thing too. And I had that in my music. I had instructors that were there for that moment in time in my life until I was ready to go to someone else. Okay. I never did it like two teachers at the same time. No, but I studied with this one until it was time to go to someone else, for whatever reason. And nothing derogatory. It's just that, okay, I've gotten what I need to go in a different direction now, kind of thing. So with me, the one thing that I always tried to do, and the one thing that I pride myself on, and this is kind of getting back to Stanley, is that I'm a coach that knows enough about striking, grappling, and physical fitness. I can cover it all, in my opinion. You know, I can take you to world class levels in all of that. So that's where I'm at. That's what I take the most pride in, because I've had guys that I've trained strictly grappling, or one guy, Vince, just boxing, or just strictly physical, you know, just exercises, you know, and get them, you know, I got many of them up to, you know, a very high level. Um, so I take pride in that. I think that's the thing that um, I think that's what I'm most proud of. So you know, you don't need four different instructors here, you know, each one competing for your time, each one competing for your attention. Um, I can cover all the bases. So that's the thing that's what I'm most proud of, I guess. You know, versatility, being versatile. And that's what I wanted to be. And I think I became that, thankfully.
I don't know if this is an example of scrolling, but I got this from a buddy who claims, let me show this. Can you guys see this?
Yeah, that could be it.
But yeah, it's a guy who he got it from I guess a strong man who bends steel and then makes like art out of it, basically.
Scrolling right there. Yes. If it was done, I'm not doubting the strong man. Don't mention names. But
I don't know. Yeah.
done legitimately, that is an example of scrolling. Yeah.
But yeah, it's a cool like piece of artwork that I've had for a long time. And the thing with Rodvan too, I don't know if you've seen pictures, Nico, but he didn't just bend the coin; he folded it in half like a taco, which is like crazy. I've seen pictures, but I always thought it would be such a awesome artifact to have. You know, I'm sure there's got to be some floating around in like somewhere in Cleveland, like in antique shops or something. Although people probably don't even know what it is, but
Right. And then, you know, he used to break coins too. You just bend them back and forth until it breaks. Um, but yeah, that was always the one thing that eluded me. Okay. If I could have done one feat of strength, that would have been, you know, that I didn't do, that would have been it. Um, and I just couldn't do it, you know, or didn't do it. I don't know. That was phenomenal to me. Uh, that grip in general. But again, see, like when getting back to the grippers, there's different forms of grip strength. There's finger strength, there's grip strength, there's forearm strength, like wrist curl stuff. It's an anatomical, there's more than just one way to be strong with your hands. Um, and you know, it's dangerous. You know, I there was a point, like I told you, you guys know this, that I got real serious into studying jazz accordion. It was after my training with him, and that I became cognizant of my hands, of my fingers. Okay, I was becoming very concerned here because I wanted to become, you know, the best player in the world, jazz. You know, I wanted to play, so I had to watch what I did with my hands. You know, and yes, I've gotten broken fingers and things like that. That's bad enough, but I risked tendon injuries. Did we lose Nico?
yeah, I think he had a drop early. So if he doesn't join back in, I thought he was going to say goodbye, but maybe that was just.
But yeah, with me, I was always worried about, you know, injuring my hands, and even with the drums, because I played a lot of finger stuff, a Moeller technique with the drums, and you know that is all finger work. So and that's another one of my problems. I wanted to become great at a lot of things. I didn't have that one like single focus, like on one thing and one thing only, and that worked against me. In a way, it makes me avant-garde, or makes me, you know, a man of all seasons. I guess people have said, you know, you're pretty good at these things, and it's pretty interesting. You know a lot about these subjects, but you know, I have my specialties. You know, what I do as far as fighting is probably that's the highest thing. That's the thing I'm the best at. And then probably there was a point in time when, you know, it was close between the drums and pool. but yeah, I wish I could have, in hindsight, if I was able to focus just on one thing. But the thing with the fighting, there was no outlet for that. There was no UFC, MMA, whatever, none of that. So it was pointless there was no competition. Okay. I did it to save my life, and I've used it so many times to save my life. So I'm victorious there. It paid off. Okay. Um, but I I was very passionate about music. It's sad that I don't play. It's just lost the ability really, but I still have that love and appreciation for music. Uh, and I love pool, but not, I mean, I don't know. It's not, there's no reason for me to focus on pool. There's no money in it, even at the high, not that I would ever be the best player in the world, but there's not a lot of money. This isn't snooker, okay, where these guys are making six figures, um, or seven figures. There's no, there's, pool it's a funny thing. And, but the music, I think now in my life, music doesn't mean the same to me like it used to. And that's sad. I start to get down sometimes because I don't get that goose pimple thing anymore when I listen to it. And I don't sense the need to turn to music like I used to. And it's extraordinarily rare that I'll have the radio on in my car. I normally don't have the radio on. I just have the quiet so I can gather my thoughts and whatever.
Yeah, similarly, I noticed for me with music that so I used to work, I work in computers. And one of the gigs I had was like, they used to call it a computer operator where you were sitting there, and this was back in the day when you were mounting tapes and stuff. But you had like 8 hours or whatever in this computer room. And so I had the radio on 8+ hours a day, not to mention when it was in the car or whatever. And literally all the music I liked, I listened to it so many times. I had internalized it so much that it became dull to me. I lost that, like if a favorite song of mine came on, it didn't necessarily matter. And I noticed that and it kind of scared me. And I'd say for the last couple of decades now I avoid just listening to music as kind of like in the background. Like I just listen to like news or information. And it's nice if I haven't heard, like I'm a rock fan. So, I think like a lot of them, I'm a Beatles fan, but that music is almost hard to escape. It's in the background everywhere and it unfortunately can wear it out for you. There's certain bands that I never need to hear again, even though I love them, they've just been played to death. And that's unfortunate. So I actually have to take a break sometimes from a musician or a band, or if I hear it on the radio, I'll turn it off just because I don't want to spoil it. But I think, yeah, just even some amazing piece of art, or you can hear too much of it. I think, which is a bummer.
Yeah, and the music industry has changed. Obviously, everybody knows this. So I'm not, uh, I was never a fan, really, a big fan of country. I like I was raised around some of the old country that current country fans don't like that. Um, but yeah, my kind of music, well, of course, forget about just, okay, everybody knows I'm a jazz guy, but just even the rock that I was raised on, um, it doesn't exist anymore in any kind of, they're not pumping out the songs. And, being raised in the urban area, growing up, I heard a lot of Luther Vandross, Kool and the Gang, Earth, Wind and Fire, and all of those, a lot of R&B. And again, you know, a lot of those guys they're, I don't want to say they're gone, like some of them have passed away, but yeah, there's nothing new coming out. So yeah, I'm not, when I listen to Earth, Wind and Fire, it's always, not romantic. What's the word?
Nostalgia, or
Nostalgia. Yeah, it's nostalgic, right? So I listen to X amount of songs from them that I love. And like you, I kind of tune it off, So seems when I'm out and about in public, and every so often I'll play something on the jukebox because most places have the internet jukebox. You can almost get everything. I either play a song as a ball bust, or if we're in the middle of a conversation and somebody's like, "Oh, I don't remember that song," or I haven't heard that in 20 years. Well, I'll go try to find it and I'll play it. Okay. So it's more or less as an event as opposed to, something that I'll sit there and listen to and enjoy, you know. But two, I have so much stress, so many things going on, and I do tend to seem to be, I do tend to be isolated. Um, yeah, I'm not really, I'm just that my frame of mind isn't on that. Um, but also when, with Chicago, I would go to a lot of Polish places, that are Irish, and and I would listen to their music because somebody would play the Irish stuff or the Polish rock and everything, and so I would hear that, eh, and if there's a bunch of, let's say, Polish people, I'm not gonna start playing my jazz, or they don't. Many of the jukeboxes just didn't have the kind of music I liked. Then when I would go to my Italian place in the city, yeah, they have all the Frank Sinatra, Tony Bennett stuff, you know. But again, Frank's been dead since '98, I believe, '97. Tony Bennett's not coming out with anything new. He did those duets and stuff, but same old song, different, maybe slight arrangement differences. But yeah, I mean, how many times can you hear it? You know, uh, so yeah, I'm like you though, man. The music itself playing, and you've been trying to get me to play, practice again, and I did try to pick up. I don't have my drums anymore. I lost them when I lost my gym, but I do have a practice pad and the sticks. And man, I just lost the feeling, And I remember hearing Buddy Rich talk about that when he had one of his heart attacks. He lost the feeling in his hands, whatever. I mean, he got it back. Well, I'm not Buddy Rich. So, I just don't feel like, well, what's the point in putting, I mean, believe me, I've lost a lot. I lost a lot more than I thought I lost, as far as coordination and everything. So, yeah, I don't need the negativity right now, the frustration of it, of starting from square one with the rudiments and everything. Um, I'm not there, mentally. I just don't want to do it. So part of getting good at anything, as I mentioned a million times before, is burning desire. You have to desire it. I don't. That's not to say that I won't in in the coming years, but it's I don't right now. So I'm not gonna push it. Just not gonna do it.
A couple thoughts, and I don't know if this would be better for another episode, but we should talk maybe about the crossover between music and fight training, and or just the arts and fight training, because obviously, like, I'd be curious to see, like, kind of the crossover from the idea of, specifically the drums, to me seem to have, like, the rhythm and the coordination seems to be would be a good supplement, even though, I mean, they seem kind of completely different disciplines. But it seems like, feeling the rhythm of a fight, or getting just knowing how to uh I don't know, hit someone on the offbeat, so to speak, or on the half beat. Does that stuff, when you get to a higher level, does that, you know, kind of help? Is it a good training mechanism?
Well, we should save that for another show, but I will address specifically what you've said there. Yes, it helps tremendously because there is two things in a fight: rhythm and timing. And the key is to offset your opponent so his rhythm and timing is not accurate. And that and you don't even have to be a drummer for that, because any good musician um, understands the concepts of tempo, rhythm, syncopation, accents. Um, it's learning to get that transmitted into the fight world. And with me, the learning how to improvise, okay, which is jazz, which jazz brought to me, was the single biggest light bulb as far as my fighting went. I had been playing the drums since I was a little boy. So I had that rhythm thing and the timing thing and all of that. And I would do drum solos, all that. But when I started studying jazz theory and learning how to just improvise, that was the biggest thing. And that's something that we'll save for another show because that deserves its own topic and it deserves to be delved into because that's something that again, it's one of the things I feel separates me from others is getting you to learn to improvise because that's what fighting's all about. Okay. You watch any boxing, kickboxing, MMA match, generally you have seconds, cornermen telling you what to do or shouting out advice. And you normally have time to prep for your opponent, so on. So you already know what's going on. You don't have any of that in a street fight. Okay. You don't have any sort of thing. And even in a fight where you do have a professional fight, where you do have cornermen, it's still about learning what can I do now to break this guy's rhythm or tempo and timing? So that's the thing where the improvisation helped me in learning how to improvise. Okay. And, that to me was once it all clicked, um, it was a mutual beneficial situation because of my fight training. I had the discipline to go through practicing on the accordion, for example, hour after hour after hour, day after day after day, that regimen, that Ronnie Moon had me on. You got to do your inversions, you got to do this and that. That was no problem, because it wasn't painful like wrestling and fighting. So, but I already had the discipline to do that. And then learning to jazz improvise, how to improvise, developing my brain to improvise fed into my fighting. Okay. So it was a blend for me. Now, I'm not going to say that it's going to be like this universal, but for me, it was the perfect marriage. It was a meld between the two. And I don't know. I guess in that regard, I was blessed. I was very lucky, but I also had obsession with this stuff, all of it. I became obsessed hours after hours after hours of training, no matter what it was that I would get myself into. Okay. I delved in hours a day, never hour a day, never minutes a day, hours at everything. And, sometimes you burn out, sometimes you don't. But I mean, same with Pac-Man, hours a day playing Pac-Man, when I was into that. Everything I did full, all the way. Okay. So I can say, I gave it all a good shot, but there were certain things in my life that I kind of dabbled in, never really got serious about it. And that tends to, it works itself out. It's like a diversion. But yeah, we can talk about this another day, which would be kind of nice. And I used to talk about training with metronomes and things like that. And now all these metronomes you can download them on your phone. But yeah, I don't want to get into it now. Let's save this as a surprise for other people because it's a deep subject. And music itself has so many different genres and methods and time tested methods. This is not something that's just been developed recently. Music goes back, way back. So that's a good place. It's like science. It's a good place to draw from. It won't steer you wrong. But yeah, today, I'm just, getting, I know the weather's going to be changing, getting crappier outside. That's fine. I don't care anymore. I'm not one of these guys I don't like it 100 degrees. I don't mind a little bit of change of seasons, just as long as you're prepared. I think, the biggest problem, like for me, like in the winter, is when you have plans and they get destroyed because of the weather. But that happens even in summer. You may want to do something outdoors and it's raining. So you can't do it. But um, you know, my whole life I've been around tremendous snow in Cleveland, which was where I lived, was actually worse than Chicago. And the generally the last few winters have been relatively mild. I mean, we'll get a snowstorm or two, but it hasn't been that bad. So, and I still think the spring, summer, and fall in the Midwest is great. I don't know what you think about it, but I don't have a problem with it.
I just wish winter was a little bit shorter. I actually like it. Like I like Christmas and New Year's, and it kind of, when it's darker out, everybody puts the lights out. But it's those last couple months of like February and March that just it's like, oh man, let's get this over with. I can't wait for it to be, where I can be outside in my shorts and a t-shirt and not be in pain. But so I like the change a little bit. I think it mixes things up. When I lived in California, just it was only 9 months, but it was like because the weather was varied very little bit. You honestly did not notice when it was a good day. It was like you took it for granted, um, for what it's worth. So like, when it finally becomes spring, it's almost kind of euphoric here because it's been so either gray and overcast or cold for so long that when the weather finally turns nice, and I always like that era. Kind of tying the weather and crappy weather back to what we were talking about with conditioning. What about like you advocate conditioning for other things like the cold? So, like exposing yourself to like cold showers or, cold water, like, things like that to kind of build that mental fortitude. Is that something that you've done or would see that there's a value to?
Well, I mean, I've tried everything through the years, but the best thing to do is just to be outside. If you're in a cold weather climate, that's where you need to be working out. Not every day, but you need to get out there in the snow. You need to get out there on the ice. You need to get out there in a rainstorm. I've said this before. If you like to drink, if you're let's if you're a drunk, or Friday night, you like to go out to the bars, you need to train tanked up. You need to know how you're going to react when you're drunk. Okay. So you have to put yourself in as many reality situations as you possibly can. It's not that difficult to do. You know, um, yeah, I've heard this cold showers, this and that. And I've taken cold showers, but for other reasons. But
Huh.
yeah, if it works for you, who am I to say don't do it? But to me, get outside. If you're in a cold weather climate, which we're going to be again shortly here, nothing stopping you from going outside and doing your thing. Um, you know what it's like, man. How your hands hurt. You think, man, I don't want to hit anybody, man. I'll break my hands, my fingers, or something, because you're like frozen, or that you can't get your grip, your footing, you know. Or if you think you're going to flop to your back, you're going to get smothered because the guy's going to probably drag you into a snowbank, And what about that? What about somebody smearing your face, with snow or something, shoving it down your mouth? I mean, these are things that can happen. Okay. Or if you try to turn and go face down, well, now what? Okay. Um, and on and on. I've discussed this before. I have what, 3, 4 years of videos on Facebook that every day of stuff. I'm sure I know I've discussed all this stuff, but yeah, yeah. The more you expose yourself, the better. And you don't need to do it every day. You can't burn yourself out. Take some time off, but you don't mean basically what I'm saying is you don't have to go out in a snowstorm every day, but you do need to expose yourself to it and see what works, what doesn't work, and work out in the clothing that you would wear as well. In even if you're indoors, and especially women, who may wear dresses to work or something like that, or high heels or whatever. Have you worked out in that stuff? Do you know how you're going to react with, I mean, come on, this is not, I mean, there's a chasm still, even many reality based people, they don't truly train reality. They train faux, and, there's, you know, just go outside if you have to, especially now with the COVID thing. But that's another thing that's affecting a lot of people in their training. I heard that DeKalb and Rockford have or are going to start closing down again. They're taking steps back. At least this is what I heard yesterday. I didn't look it up or anything, but a couple people told me. Um, so who knows what we're going to be facing coming up. And that's again, why I keep saying to join my distance learning program, because that's you can train in that no matter what. no matter what the conditions are, because it's you, or it's you and your training partner that you trust, But yeah, I've sometimes thought about, when I was a kid in the 70s growing up, watching all the television shows, the majority of them, maybe all of them, were either California or New York, or it was ambiguous, but you knew that it was California, or you knew that it was supposed to be New York. New York, of course, I could gravitate towards, because Cleveland that's same thing pretty much, same urban thing. But the California stuff, I could never, really get, the sunny, the palm trees, whatever, this and that. It was kind of hard to relate as a city boy, with bad weather. It's kind of hard to relate to that, and it just seemed like the New York based stuff had that grit, that crime, that hardness that I was used to in my life. I did not have the Brady Bunch. Okay. Um, I I actually never said this before, but somebody asked me once, or more than once, um, did I have a father figure on TV? Like Mike Brady, the son?
Mhm.
And I did. And it will blow you, probably surprise you, but my father figure was James Evans from Good Times. I'm like, I wish I had him as a father, because they were in the projects in Chicago. Well, I lived in the ghetto in Cleveland. I didn't have, all the, the family, the sister and the other brother, and then of course JJ. But here's a father who had it rough, and who still provided, and you know, they were a family unit under bad circumstances. And that was a show that I could totally relate to, utterly. Okay. I could relate to that. And I never related to the Jeffersons, because they lived, look where they lived, a deluxe apartment in the sky. I couldn't relate to that. you know um when All in the Family first came out, I was kind of young for that. I mean, but again, I never, I mean, I love the show, that was funny, but I didn't relate to it in that regard. But yeah, I related to Good Times, believe it or not. And then of course my little escape from reality was Charlie's Angels. Because, wow, okay, I'm in love here. You know, so yeah, coming from urban, and coming from the crime, the hopelessness of where I lived, you just, all I ever thought about was surviving, and getting out, and what's my future going to be. And I never had, and it's not just me, none of us had any agencies or groups or organizations that were really there to help us. If they existed, we didn't know about it. Okay. And that was very hard, because the biggest thing to take away is hope, or shatter someone's dreams. And that happened to me. I don't, I mean, there wasn't there, there was nobody that could say, hey, if you did this, this is where the outcome could be. This could be a positive. You could get a good career here, or you could get a good education here, or something. I never had that. Okay. I just always had the hardcore blue collar old timers that, weren't, you know, their thoughts weren't on get a college education or get a trade, or even they were like, man, you got to survive this neighborhood's bad, boy, that kind of shit. So that's a big regret, because I and it affected me, and it affected me even in my personal life outside of my neighborhood. Like when I got old enough to drive, and I graduated school, many girls refused to date me from different, from, because I would meet them in they're totally different areas. They'd go out, or they talk to me, and then, or their parents would say, no dice. Where he lives, you're not going. No, this is it. Forget it. Wrong side of the tracks kind of guy. So you get a lot of resentment that just, I don't know, yeah, resentment for sure, but you just get frustrated. It's like, man, Jesus, can I get a break here? You know? So I don't know how we got on that subject, but okay. Thank you, Dr. Cardinal for listening. Or father, should I call you Father Cardinal? No, I didn't confess any sins. Um, you would have been a good priest, I think, though. I really do. You have that kind of calming, especially the way your hair looks today. It's almost kind of like, you saw God or something. You got frightened because your hair's all over the place. But you told me the other day you're trying to do the Einstein thing. So
Well, I feel I've got kind of a cross between, Senator Rand Paul and Shemp Howard, kind of between the two of them. That's where I'm at right now. Um,
yeah,
so
Shemp especially.
the underappreciated stooge. It's hard to live under Curly's shadow, but what are you going to do?
Shemp was
Uh,
a big fight fan. I think he died either at the fights or on the way to or from the fights. Boxing. He was a big fight fan. How many sports did you have back then? It's not like today. I mean, football's only 100 years old. Organized football started in 1920. And you didn't have a lot of teams. And of course, think you didn't have television and this and that. And, you know, boxing was like the big thing. And, maybe with the exception of Babe Ruth, or maybe not, the most famous athlete was, the heavyweight champion of the world. And, who would ever have thought that would have changed? But it has. Boxing has dwindled for the last few decades, couple decades at least, I think, to a degree. What's the first fight you ever saw? Do you remember?
Professional fight?
Boxing, yeah, I'm talking. Yeah.
Yeah, not my sister beating on me. Let me think. I don't remember. I remember Ali being on TV a lot. So he was, in the 70s, in Wild World of Sports or something. It seemed like he would be on, maybe a couple times a year. So he was always just kind of a fixture in the background. And I remember him losing and it being a big thing. I can't remember. Now, this is not like one of his early losses, like to
Frazier.
Yeah, this was after that. I think this was towards the twilight of his career.
Leon Spinks.
Probably was Leon Spinks. And I remember that being a big thing because it was kind of like, oh, there's going to be an Ali fight and Ali's going to win. It was just kind of the assumption for a long time growing up. And so it was kind of, I don't want to say pleasant surprise, but kind of refreshing to say, oh, wow, actually, something, an unexpected outcome from that. But then I think for sure, I remember really being into watching Hagler in the 80s. And
Great.
for sure the Leonard fight. And I don't remember if I actually was able to watch it, but I remember waiting for the outcome. But yeah, and like I said, it was a lot more accessible because it was on TV back then. There wasn't pay-per-view, at least prior probably to the Hagler Leonard fight. It just seems like every Saturday you could flip on the TV and they'd either be rebroadcasting something. Well,
they did closed circuit. They did have pay-per-view or I saw the Leonard Duran, the first one, Leonard Duran, at a movie theater live. It was closed circuit. And I remember that. And I do remember not all the fights were televised because I remember scanning the AM dial, believe it or not, to try to find live radio broadcasts of the fight, round by round, blow by blow description. Which there's now, you look back, there's something romantic about that. It's nostalgic, to listen. The announcers were they were actors in a way, they made you feel like you're there. So yeah, I of course, being raised with a fighter and, meeting a lot of fighters as a kid, I had a little more involved in it. I was a little more, this was my thing more than most. And I don't really want to get into that because everybody then, World War II guys, had their opinions, on who was the best, and it was not Muhammad Ali. I mean, almost to a man, everyone was Joe Louis, Joe Louis, Joe Louis. And in hindsight, when you look at Joe, he looked like one of the first modern boxers. He moved, he had kept his arms right and everything. He moved in a certain way. Of course, he's smaller now. I mean, what did he fight at 190 or something? Like Marciano. I mean, look how small, he wouldn't even be considered a heavyweight at this stage. But yeah, I never got to see any of the old timers. I'm not that old, but I wish I could have, but yeah. And then baseball, football, when I was raised in the era as a young man where the Cleveland Browns were not a good team, very bad. Then, 1980, they didn't have such a bad season there, but then we had the cardiac kids, and Ernest Biner. I don't even want to go there. We should have been in the Super Bowl. And I think the biggest heartbreak is that we actually won the Super Bowl. When you think about it, the Browns leave Cleveland, they go to Baltimore. A couple of years later, they're the Super Bowl champs. That was our team. That was Cleveland Browns team. And Baltimore, of all places to move to, after the way they cried, their fans cried when their team moved out in the middle of the night. Well, then they do it to us. They do it to Cleveland. So I will never pull for the Ravens. That'll never happen in my lifetime. But yeah, I never got into hockey. For a while, Cleveland didn't even have a hockey team, but they also at a time had two teams: the Barons, which I believe were WHA, and the Crusaders, which were NHL, or vice versa. I'm not into hockey. But I certainly was into hockey in 1980 when it was, the Olympics, which is still one of the greatest sports moments of my life, and maybe of this country. We were united. And let's see what else. Yeah, in baseball, the Indians, again, growing up, I got to go to some games, but they were not, they were never a contender, until when I was living out here in Chicago, then, in the 90s, I was already here, and, with their World Series appearances and so on. But yeah, sports have always been somewhat of an outlet. Well, not somewhat, quite an outlet for me as a competitor, or as a participant, and as a spectator. And you, same thing. You had the '85 Bears, but outside of that, you didn't have anything. Cubs.
Well, yeah, for growing up in the 70s, we didn't win anything. I mean, I was so desperate for a win. I remember the first Chicago championship in my lifetime was the Chicago Sting. Their soccer team won. I mean, no one cared about soccer, but I mean, now a lot of people, it's kind of become much more popular, over the decades. But I remember I was going to be a Sting fan because they actually were winning. No one was winning back in the day. So until the Bears won, I had not seen a championship in Chicago my entire life. And that was just completely unexpected, kind of came out of nowhere. I mean, now it's funny looking back. I mean, with, the Sox have won a couple times, the Cubs even won. And of course, like, the Jordan era with basketball, Chicago is definitely, people don't tend to think of this town as being deprived of championships, but during the 70s, and probably well before I was, I was on the map, we were just on a drought for years and years and years for any kind of a championship.
Same here, but there was a time where Cleveland was called the City of Champions because they had a baseball champion and an NFL champion. This is before the Super Bowl. And the last championship for the Browns was the World Championship was 1964, the year of my birth, and I didn't see a championship until I was living out here with the Cavaliers, so I went back for that. That I went back for the parade, you couldn't get a ticket, but I went back for the parade and all that, which was great, to be a part of that. I even did a podcast, Facebook thing from there, a video, a vlog, or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. And, I was very happy, but I would have loved it to be the Browns. I would have loved it to be the Indians. And, hopefully I'll be able to see that in my lifetime. I don't know. I mean, at this stage of the game, I'm not so much, I don't live vicariously through that. I never have really. I mean, I have my own feelings on it, but yeah, I wonder, as a kid, if I was, raised in New York with the Yankees, or, whatever, some other team, St. Louis even had a lot of championships, or Cincinnati or Oakland when I was a kid. Um, when you become accustomed to it, when you almost expect it, I expect my team to win. I don't know. I don't know how I would feel about that. I'll never live to feel that because, I never expect my teams to win. But man, I kind of put a probably put a different verve on it. Um, but yeah, you tend to. I think that's another way. Another reason too why I became more of an individualist. I wanted to get personal accomplishments. I wanted to be a good card player. I wanted to be a good pool player. Uh, you know, um, I wanted to because I could control that. I'm not going to get my enjoyment from the Browns because they're going to lose. So I'll find it in myself. So in that regard, I think that personally made me more driven, to excel at the things that I did, you know. But yeah, that's about it, man. I really don't know what else to say. We're kind of talking a lot of personal stuff here, like, walking through nostalgia lane. But I do hope that I was able to reach some of the people today regarding, pain tolerance and just training and the importance of being realistic and pushing yourself to limits that, don't make everything become routine. Don't take things for granted, challenge yourself physically, mentally, emotionally, you know, get back to ground zero. You know, maybe if you drive to the gym, maybe take public transportation a little bit now and then. Work a little harder at it. Don't make everything so convenient. Get out there and see what's around the world here, where you're at. You know, get in touch with things. Um, Change your routine around. If you work out, let's say you lift weights at 6 o'clock at night after work, you know what? Why don't you try for a couple of months getting up much earlier than you normally do when you go to work and go to the gym at 3 or 4 in the morning or whatever. Change it around. Get to know yourself in different scenarios and different situations because complacency, man, that's not a good thing. You start to lull yourself and you don't want that. So sometimes you got to stir the pot. So make changes. Um, these are all within your control normally, right? They should be. Uh, and I'm a big believer in that. And you never know what you can find, within yourself. And I don't know. That's just certain things that I think that you can do, little tips and tricks that you can do that, don't really cost any money. Or maybe public transportation does, but you're saving on gas. Um, just try to do things differently, expand your routines, expand your horizons. And, I wish everyone out there the best of luck and keep in touch. And then, next week we'll plan for next week's show. I don't know what, we don't really plan anything. We just normally don't say anything. But this last time I don't know, I think I brought up pain management and all of a sudden Joe and Nico's like, yeah, I want to talk about that. And then we were going to do it last week, but the show got, Nico couldn't make it and things just fell apart. So, but yeah, I don't have anything else to say. Do you have anything to add, Joe, or any closing thoughts?
No, I think that was actually a good way of summarizing and closing things together. But yeah, I think that's just an aspect of training that I think gets neglected a lot. There's a lot to it, and I think we should come back to it. I think there's more to deal with there. But absolutely, definitely, yeah, it's a good thing to incorporate for sure.
All righty then. I will, email you, chat with you, whatever during the week. Thanks everybody for watching.
All right, goodbye, guys.